talking about just firstly about the tournament. Yeah, obviously you got to understand what the tournament was about. It was a different type of Euro tournament, you know, having that various, I think it was 9 countries that hosted the games, where it's not usually the case. So the travel played a big role in a lot of the perspective of how the teams or how the countries would prepare and how they're going to get through the tournament, you know. So that made it a whole different perspective than being in one home base camp and then just traveling in around one country. Whereas now you had 9 different countries, so it made it a different kind of ball game this time round. And those countries that could handle it better. Yes, people would say England had a better roll of the dice, having played a lot of their games at home. But yeah, you still have to deal with coming out of the home support and how immense they are and critical they are of your teams, your countries, you know. So there was a whole new dimension to this Euro this year. I thought Mancini really had a happy camp with his players. They looked like they wanted to play for Italy, which is, and the Italians have been renowned for having a really different perspective from each player. You know, they've been very much an individual-based team in the past, although they've been very successful at some tournaments. But for me, they seem to be more around the team dynamics and not an individual player dynamics in this tournament. And I think that's what made them so successful in this tournament. They looked a really, really happy team. Mancini went on and embarked on a two-year sort of program where he said, okay, I'm going to dismantle the team of the past. Yes, I'm not going to totally dismantle them. They had a lot of key players, key professional players that they could look to for the experience, but then had a lot of other players that were really, really key to the fundamental success of the team that could ignite that team. Traditionally, Italy have always been one, and I'm talking about Italy as the winners. Italy have always been one where they have been a defensive team looking for the 1-0 win. But this tournament, they looked like they could score more goals in every single game, which was really, really, for an Italian supporter, must have been really, really enlightening. Yes, you can talk about the semi-final against Spain, where they were up against it and probably didn't deserve to win it, but they were resolute, stuck it out, and won on penalties, and which is very much a mental game. Happiness, take the penalty, and progress. Yeah, countries have their way of playing, but I think Italy have realized that their way that they've done things in the past was not going to bring them that success. And I think Mancini realized that when he took over and said, look, I've analyzed the most successful teams of this time, the Belgians, the French, you know, even the English, they changed their game plan. Gee, I can't believe how England have changed. There's no more the route one. They're playing it through the back. They're playing it, they're dynamic, you know, and they've got the Grealishes and all those players that are really, really skillful. So in Italy, I think Mancini realized I've got to change the thought process. So 2 years ago, he engaged obviously with his technical team and said, okay, these are the players I'm looking for. In 2 years' time for the Euro, and then working towards obviously the World Cup as well. Where are we going to be in the certain areas of the park to make a difference? Italy never have a problem defensively. They'll always never have a problem. They've got experience at the back. They've got players that are very, very robust in their tackles. but that's not going to win you the game anymore. How do you keep the possession once you've won it back? How far up the pitch are you going to make those tackles? Do we want to put pressure on the high end of the game, of the pitch? And once we put that pressure, are we able to come out of it with the passing movements and keep possession and hurt opposition very, very, very quickly? And I think he brought those dynamics to the Italian team. You know, so much to say that, I mean, Bonucci at the back was playing 40-yard balls. He was playing balls straight up to the central strikers at times. He bypassed the midfield at times. And he was playing those balls in behind defenses and realizing that they had now the dynamics of the variation in their game. And so I thought, you know, Mancini changed the Italian thought process, and he brought it over various, I mean, to go, I'm not quite sure if I can remember, 20 or how many 26 games unbeaten in the way, in the process. And all the time they were getting better and better and better at it. And, you know, had players that in the past you could say, okay, that's going to be the starting 11 and that's it. Those were the strengths. Whereas, you know, they had the major injuries in the tournament and they replaced them, and the players just came in and just chopped and changed, and in games made substitutions that kept them as strong as what they were at the start of the game. And that's what you need throughout the tournament. I mean, once they've qualified in their opening 2 matches, you know, change dynamics and give everybody, I mean, I stand to be corrected, but I think Italy used every single player in their squad. Okay, bar probably the goalkeeping side of it, but every outfield, I think they had some game minutes within the tournament, and that is so essential, you know, that they are kept, and that makes the team together. You know, really realizing that, oh, it's not just going to be the starting 11, that I may get my chance in the next game. From an England perspective, Southgate virtually did very much the same. Young-based team. They've had a lot of success in the under 17, under 20 age group. So those were teams that have won World Cups at that age group, and used a young group of players that were gaining in international caps throughout their campaign, and also blended with more experienced campaigners, which was very important. And that's why they had both those teams, England and Italy, who were the finalists, were very much built along the same principles. It looked like Southgate's team dynamics were also a very, very, very happy squad. You know, they didn't bring in the various club dynamics that can come to destroy a national team, where, you know, you're talking about that competitiveness within the club dynamics that can come and destroy national teams. There were very, very happy players that had a blend of youth and experience. Look, obviously, the Italian goalkeeper was named the player of the tournament. I thought Insigne was very good for Italy. I thought he did a wonderful role for them. Bonucci at the back, leadership, you know, brought that, you know, obviously that kind of role to them. England have a number of their players that played key roles in their makeup. Sterling did a wonderful role, and Kane, as a provider, generally Kane would be the other way around. He would be on the end of, he created a number of assists, you know. But I still, I don't think they were wrong in choosing the Italian goalkeeper as player of the tournament. Yeah. in a certain dynamics. I thought they weren't too far off it. Everybody has different thought processes about players and the like. You know, Ronaldo, I thought, while, you know, he had to be involved. I mean, he was one of the leading goal scorers. Yes, okay, people can say he scored 3 penalties, but still up there, you know. Portugal didn't go far, so maybe that was where the thought process of that was about. That they didn't go as far in the tournament, and the teams that went further in the tournament provided the most players. But that's always the case generally, you know. That's always the case generally. He's really overpowering. He's good. He's obviously going to be great in the air. I mean, he stands 6 foot whatever, 6'7", 6'8", tall. Good for tournament football because you know you're going to have penalty shootouts. So his reach is really, really good. I just don't know why the thought process didn't come from the opposition in when you're taking a penalty against them to shoot it high, because large goalkeepers like that will do very, very well low into the corners, but they cannot dive. They will not be able to do it in a high factor. So if I was a coach in that tournament against Italy, I would have said, okay, you're going for a corner, pick your corner, but you must go high. Don't look for the low corner. Look for a high corner, because he will not get up. He can get down. He can't get up. And that would have been my thought process as a coach, to instruct players, you know, pick your corner, but go high, like Maguire did. I mean, Maguire smashed it into the top corner. The guys that went high generally scored the goals in a shootout. But coming back to your question about the keeper, yeah, he's got ability on the ground. He plays out, you know, he's very good in his handling, shot stopper. He's agile, very agile for the size he is. So yeah, he's got complete. He's going to be a very good keeper. He is a very good keeper, but he's going to be even a better one. Yeah, obviously, shorter you are, you're going to be more agile, more. You know, it's a case of picking the opponent's corner. And I mean, Pickford must be gutted, absolutely gutted. He made some unbelievable saves in that shootout, and it didn't happen for him. You know, I mean, to save 2 penalties in a shootout and you still lose, 2 out of 5, and you still lose is really must be gutted. You know, and yeah, I mean, he was. You could see how he was growing as a goalkeeper in the tournament. You know, now given his chance, given game time. You know, still a little bit raw. You know, one or two free kicks caught out, but he'll learn. He'll get better. Well, one of the best rules that they've changed is that you don't have to pass the ball outside the 18-yard area when you take a goal kick. So that's allowed for that passing movement within the 18-yard area to start moves. You know. Which has now made the goalkeeper fundamentally important in the build-up play. Yes, he was important before. The Dutch, the Ajax system had brought that goalkeeper in very much into it, and that is for almost 20, 30 years already. But even more so now, yeah, the build-up, as you say, they pass it, they create the triangles in and around the 18-yard area. And I mean, in the past, geez, my coaches would have said, what the hell are you doing passing and playing a fool around your big box, you know? Yes, it is risky. And it has happened that it's not fallen through, that the passing movements haven't escaped the closing down of the opposition. You are somewhere along the line going to make where a player miscontrols and you're going to get hurt for it maybe. But generally now that is a fundamental part to create the extra player working out the box, because now the goalkeeper becomes an extra player in that dimension of the final, your defensive third or the final third of the opposition. So now you're using a goalkeeper to be used in the passing movements, which then creates the triangles for which you to play out of to create that extra player. So that's where the whole thought process has come from passing out from the back, from a goal kick. Is now they have that extra player. But sometimes the goalie is not even in his goals. He's on the right-hand side of the 18-yard area and they're passing around. So yes, it's become something that obviously teams now will work at. But you must maintain your triangles within that play, and you must have players that are really, really comfortable on the ball. Coming back to your question of coaches, how important they are to the makeup, club versus country, in terms of not versus, but club as opposed to country. It's a whole new ball game, because when you're at the international level as a coach, there are two facets to it. The qualification process, where you basically have the squad for 1 week, 10 days, maybe 2 weeks at the most. Depends on how well organized your club leagues are organized, to give you that enough time to prepare, which is also a big perspective on the preparation of getting the league games well in advance, so that you can have more time to prepare your national team. So that's another factor. But the club coach works obviously without giving too much away. He works with them daily, works with players daily, where you can work on the actual critical areas of players in terms of their development, not necessary development, but can be development of the player on an ongoing basis. Whereas a national coach doesn't have that time. He gets a player, and obviously when you're talking national team, he should be fully equipped to play at the highest level. So you're not teaching him the basics. You're not teaching him how to trap, how to dribble, how to do all the fundamental basics of the game. Basically, a national team coach is there to bring the camp together, bring various egos of players that are playing and competing against each other week in, week out. Okay, not all the players are in that. As I talk about Italy, not all the players are playing in the Italian league, or not necessarily all playing in the English Premiership, or all playing in Spain, because, yes, those kind of leading countries, the majority of the players do. But there is that diversity of players playing globally, as you can term it. But in Europe, basically a lot of the players in this Euro are playing in Europe. They're not going to be playing in South America to then be brought back to play in Europe, which in other continental tournaments, like in Africa, you have to bring players back from Europe to play in the continental tournament in Africa, and then get them back to their clubs. And that goes for South America, who also had their continental tournament, which Argentina happened to win against Brazil. So there's all these other aspects and that need to be, as you've asked me, yes, you're basing your question on the Euro, but I'm trying to do it on a global perspective, an African perspective as well. So it is difficult, but you're not there to teach a player how to dribble, trap a ball, cross a ball, kick a ball. It's more about team tactics, develop an understanding amongst each other of how the game plan is going to work. Where are you playing, home, away, what is needed in the outcome of that particular match, come tournament. As I said, for the qualification process, you actually only have them for a shorter period of time. They go back. Whereas when you come and prepare for a Euro or an AFCON, then you will have a group of players for a longer period of time, where it gives you much, much more time to prepare the guys to get a happy camp. Totally different. You've touched on it, exactly that. Africa, that's why the African nations often questioned, why do they have their tournament every 2 years? It's specifically for that fact that the African players need to be on the international stage, need to be viewed in international competitions more often. And that's why the African Cup of Nations is every 2 years. And it is used as a showcase for them to get contracts into clubs in Europe, so that they can provide for their families and obviously become entrenched in the higher leagues within Europe. And that's what's happened for a number of years. And you look at all those European-based clubs, the top players are from Europe, from Africa. Sorry, they go over as a very, very young, enthusiastic player. There's two different dynamics to that. Players that have gone over because their families have taken them over, French speaking, English speaking, whatever, wherever they're going in Europe, and set up their family structures in Europe, and then brought that African flair to their game and learned very good habits in the European-based competition level system from a young age, which is vital to bringing back that competition levels to the national team when you play in Africa. And then there's also the African players that are playing in Africa that then get seen to be scooped up by European clubs, and then take their families across to Europe and provide for their families back home. And it's purely one of a survival and to make their families self-sufficient for the rest of their lives. But yes, it's certainly that when it comes to the African scene. The club dynamics, which I was speaking about with regards to how it can destroy the national team, is if you get these cliques of the superpowers within the dynamics of a country. In our country, we have I would say the leading clubs are Sundowns, Chiefs, and Pirates from that perspective. And if you carry those perspectives across into your national team and you become alienated into your groups within the national team, you cannot achieve the success at the highest level. You've got to put the club thought processes back and work yourselves as a team dynamics within the national environment. So that's what I was talking about with the club dynamics. The club dynamics as well with the national team. The club coaches have far more time to work with their players on the fundamentals of the game. The national team coaches only have them for a week, 10 days. Of that, a certain percentage of time they're traveling to get to the country. If they're having to come from Europe to Africa, it takes time. From Europe to South America, it takes a lot of time. And obviously from Europe to Asia, you're crossing across time zones and everything. So it's really becomes really difficult. So that dynamics of an international coach, firstly, make your squad very happy. And I can talk from that perspective with our success in '96. Clive Barker brought that team dynamics of happiness into that club, into that national team. And from when you bring the happiness in and looking for the best out of each player in his particular strengths of his game, you're going to get more from that player. He's going to be a happy player, wants to express himself on the field, and he will play for you as a coach. But when you're coming into a coach that there's a lot of unhappiness, and you've seen in a lot of the World Cups in 2010, the French team was in turmoil, come out of winning have been a very successful European-based nation, and having complete turmoil. That wasn't because of how good they are as players. That was because there was a lot of the bad animosity that was involved in the dynamics of that team. And it happens with many a team, is to get that happiness within the squad, and that happiness in the squad will take you further. It's a perspective of how you put in the thought process. Sometimes coaches will do it by putting, if you can talk about it, opponents on a club level, make them roommates, or give them jobs within the perspective of the national team togetherness, give them the job to do together, or the roles together, or you look for them within the training sessions to keep them on, to put them together on the sides, and to mix the dynamics of training sessions even, so that not really too much of aware, that they're together in the training session. And so those little dynamics within training sessions are so important, so that they bring the camaraderie in the training sessions that gets taken to the matches. And it takes a real behind the scenes mentality to bring it together. And it works from the dynamics, working with the team managers, working with everybody that's within that group, in the national team, to work together. Sometimes to make jokes around the different club situations, and then enlighten it, and to make it soften everything up from that perspective. So there's quite a few ways that coaches do it, but it's generally when you've got opposite. Don't keep them opposite within the national team, but bring them together within the dynamics of the training sessions, and within rooming, by the dining room table, whatever. Get them together, The coach will obviously, he's not going to, when he chooses a selection, it's going to be very much of a blend in that selection. You can't pick 12 creative players. You're going to need some players to do the dirty work. You've got to pick some players that are very good at set pieces, both for and against. You've got to pick players that will support the dynamics, like wingers that, if you've got strikers that are very, very good in the box, they need the service. So what are the wingers how are they going to deliver that cross? So your team selection comes from, obviously, the selection gets based on how well that player is doing for his club and what he's bringing for that club. But the game has very much gone towards the versatility in the actual player, so that he can play a number of different roles, excuse me, within the team dynamics. And you saw it in the England team dynamics, that they changed their formations time and time again, from a 3-4-3, 4-3-3, so they depending sometimes on the opposition, and sometimes how within the game, in the game dynamics, they then said, okay, we're now going to change. And you had one or two players that could just change that formation without making substitutes. And that's what's the latest trend now in the game, is to make those dynamic changes within the formations, given the situation in the game, and given the situation of players that are on the field at that given time, to change your position, so that you can change your formation according to whether you're on top of the game and you want to keep dominating it, or you want to take care of a situation where it's not going so well for you. So that comes from the selection and the blend of the players, which I was talking to you about, that they are very, very versatile now. They can play on the wing, they can come inside, they can play on the left wing, come inside on the right foot to deliver and to curl the ball into the far corner. And you got left-footed players playing on the right side, right-footed players playing on the left side, and all those different dynamics, the central midfielders, getting themselves not just as destroyers, but getting themselves into the opponent's box, scoring goals from crosses, and then knowing that the dynamics of the other players around you, that there's a space centrally in the midfield that you'd look for those players to just take care of from a defensive point of view, but the other players that are realizing the situation to come in and to fill in for them for the time period that those central midfielders have gone forward and gotten themselves into the box, because that's what you need in the game now. You know, it's no such, okay, the winger will play only on the wing, or the central midfielder will only do his job to clean up and to distribute the ball. And no, you need that versatility in the player. That's key. A number of the players that you mentioned, the English players, have won World Cups at the age of 17 and age of 20 already. So Southgate has done it exceptionally well. He's brought them into the makeup of the national team and put them amongst them, although it sometimes hasn't played them all together, but he's brought them into matches where they're comfortable in the match, they're winning the match comfortably. Then he'll introduce them, Mason Mount and all those kind of guys, but those guys are playing with their clubs. They're playing with their clubs in the Champions League and in top football already at that age. So I think it comes from, we have a really great bunch of under 23 players. I'm not even talking about under 9. We've had a really good crop of under 20s and under 23 players that are, under 23s are going to the Olympics. Although not all of them are now available to go to the Olympics because of all the chaos that's happened. But it's coaches that are so much under pressure in our country that are looking for the safe routes and not willing to put a Dr. Kamala in the team at the age of 17, 18, and unfortunately, national teams don't have that jurisdiction over telling coaches in clubs what to do and who to play. So they fundamentally have to do it from their own, within their own makeup. But the national team coaches are also getting judged harshly. So it's a case of the process of when to bring them in, what tournaments, what matches to bring them in how many numbers to bring them in. So it's all, but I think Southgate has really done a tremendous job in that department, where he must have 6, 7 under the age of 20, 21 within his squad. Stand to be corrected, but he's really got a nice, that have been within the qualifiers and in his final selection, and then even more just under the age of 25. So English football at this stage is really, really in a healthy state. And those players aren't just not getting game time with their clubs. They are playing week in, week out at their clubs, and now getting the game time. The number of caps that those players have, national team caps, and they're only 20, is unbelievable. Some of them have 20, 24, 25 caps already at the age of 20. So that's really stands them in good ground in the future. Yeah, it's hard to say that because, as I said earlier, the top African players are playing in all the top leagues. It's just putting it together from an international, so that only gets really, answer your question, only gets tested at World Cups, because that's when we are playing against each other. Africa are playing against Europe, and the rest of the world are playing against Europe. Where Europe has the ultimate edge, and what I spoke about earlier, is the competition levels within the respective leagues in Europe are so high. And that's where you gain exceptional quality in your game from those high competition. yes, you got your big leagues, but even the Belgiums, the Swedish, you know, the lower tiered leagues, if you call them that, the leagues are highly competitive. Even the English Championship, it's highly competitive. So they're really gaining on that, and that's where the European players, I think, gain on the rest, on certainly from an African perspective.